Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
On a September 8th, Monday morning, and a Monday morning, the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary being celebrated today in the One Holy Catholic and Apostolic Faith. Great to be with you on a Monday after a very significant day in our One Holy Catholic and Apostolic Faith, the canonization of now Saint Blessed Carlo Acutis and, of course, Saint Pier Giorgio Frassati. So we are going to get right to a wonderful interview with two of my dear friends from southeastern Michigan, both of whom were there yesterday. Elizabeth Hale, if that name sounds familiar, yes, she is the daughter of our good friend and travel partner, John Hale from Corporate Travel, and Adora Kassab Ibrahim, who's a mom, a wife, a real estate agent, and loves the faith. She was there with her son, Dominic, and she said it was just unbelievable, so beautiful. So we'll chat with both of them in lieu of the news this morning. But we do want to give you the rest of the show. We're going to be talking with Matt Swaim at 15 minutes past the hour. Looking forward to that. And then, of course, since it is a Monday, Gail Buckley-Behringer will be with us along with Dr. Monica Miller from Citizens for a Pro-Life Society to remind us of a big event coming up for Remembering the Unborn, the National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Babies, and Monica will have all the information. Weather-wise today, we've got severe thunderstorms producing isolated hail and damaging gusts over portions of western Kansas, northwest Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma-Texas Panhandle. High-pressure system is also bringing mostly clear skies and cooler temps across much of the eastern part of the country to the Mid-South through midweek. Well, here in Italy, where we find Adora, Elizabeth, and myself, it is still beautiful, very warm, and they had the opportunity to experience the wonderful canonizations yesterday. Of course, you probably watched it on EWTN if you weren't there in person. We had great coverage all weekend long, and it was so exciting to also be in Assisi, where I spent some time over the weekend to talk to pilgrims about this beautiful event. So let me say hello to Elizabeth and Adora. Ladies, good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Teresa. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Well, Elizabeth, let me go to you first as a young person. You work for Hallow. You've been to Rome many times on your own, also with your family. What was it like for you there yesterday as a young person to see these two young men lifted to sainthood?
Oh my gosh, it was. It was a mountaintop experience. It was so exciting. I first encountered now Saint Carlo Acutis several years ago. I was in Assisi, and I had the opportunity to pray at his tomb, and I was so struck by at the time beatified young man wearing Nikes, and he was about the age of my little brother at the time, and it was like this immediate sense of it was a sense of urgency. Like, you are called to sainthood right now. There's nothing about your age that's holding you back. And that sentiment, I think, has stuck with me ever since. And it was so palpable throughout the entire city yesterday, and really throughout the whole weekend. There were young people everywhere, so excited for both Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis. And I think most remarkably, so excited to become saints themselves. Sainthood, it seems something achievable now for young people. And I think especially in a digital age where that really defines so much of how we live our lives. And there really wasn't an example of how to be a saint, online on social media before Carlo. And I think that's why people are so excited about it. It's why I was so excited to be here.
Well, it was just great to see the pictures of you in St. Peter's Square. And Adora, you're there with your son, Dominic. I know that you've been to Italy many times. You love Italy, you love the saints, and you have a special devotion to Carlo. What was it like for you to be there with your son? Thanks for joining us.
Of course. It was incredible to see Carlo Acutis, who's 15 years old, Saint Carlo now, and Saint Pier Giorgio, 24. He's right smack in the middle of that age. It was a tremendous feeling. It was a feeling where, again, like Elizabeth said, a mountaintop feeling. Just to see these young men who potentially are right in the middle of my son's age become canonized saints and models for young men and young women in today's society to look up to. And it was just a really incredible scene to see all those tens of thousands of people. I don't know what the size of the crowd was. It was holy. It was moving. It was just incredible, Teresa. It was an incredible feeling.
I think I saw this morning on the Vatican News website there were 80,000 plus there. I know you and I were talking about that yesterday, Adora. Adora, what time did you have to get in line? And in terms of the crowds, how did you manage that?
I think we had little miracles along the way. We were up at the crack of dawn, probably before the sun came out, and I think we were in line. They would not let anybody in until 7 a.m., so we got in line very early and made our way through security, and we ended up sitting in the section behind the priest in the 5th row. So
wow.
We made excellent timing, and my sister and her family were there as well, and they actually got there before we did, so they saved 2 seats in their row for Dominic and I. But I know another American family that we met the day before at the papal audience. They got stuck in the security lines for at least 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And by the time they made it in, they were seated by the Jumbotron, which is, way back from where we were sitting. Yeah,
over by the fountains there. We're talking with 2 wonderful ladies from my area in southeastern Michigan, Adora Kasab Ibrahim and Elizabeth Hale, both of whom were at the canonization yesterday of Carlo Acutis and Pier Giorgi Fossati. Elizabeth, going back to you, hon, where were you sitting? And you were mentioning some really good points about a young person and what it means to you. What was the vibe from the other young people there? What were people saying? And I know you were pretty close to everything, even close to the Pope, right?
Yes, yeah, I was very blessed. I actually had the opportunity. I had a ticket into the event, so I was up actually behind the altar, looking out onto the crowd, and I got it very early. I had my makeup done, so it was very hard not to start crying. I didn't want to think about it too much because I was going to ruin all the work I got it so early for. But looking out at the crowd and watching the tens of thousands of people just pour into the square. With our new Pope, this is his first canonization, the first American Pope, with the first millennial saint, and the first saint who's only a year or 2 older than me, and oh my gosh, it was electric, I think is the best word to describe it. Throughout the whole weekend on the plane ride over, I just encountered person after person, all of them very young, who were here for this canonization and here really to learn how to be saints. And I think that's the exciting thing. This isn't just a cool event, like a concert maybe. Like, this is something that will transform your life. And I feel just absolutely invigorated by it. I think that's the sense throughout the whole city, throughout every person, young and old, who is here. And it's been so fun.
Now, Elizabeth, you have a lot of media background, not only in your work at the newspaper at Notre Dame, but also your work right now for Hallow, and you've had an internship for Hallow. And Hallow is on the cusp of all this new media that's out there in terms of making itself so accessible to people, making the faith so accessible. What kind of an influence do you think Carlo is having on that?
Yeah, so at Hallow, Carlo is one of our patrons, of course, with his work, with the website for Eucharistic Miracles. And, I think it's a really transformational, Carlo especially is a very transformational saint for our age, because he teaches us how to be a saint today at the new frontier of evangelization. It's not the case anymore that, like it was, a couple hundred years ago with the Jesuits coming to North America in order to evangelize. Mm-hmm. Evangelization actually is happening in person, but on your phone and in your own home. And you have this ability to connect to the entire world. And so there's this incredibly powerful tool that can also be very dangerous. We are the generation that grew up with technology is the most depressed, the most mentally ill generation that has ever lived. So I think Carlo and Hallow and all of these other, and EWTN, all of these incredible organizations that use the tool of technology and social media and the digital age in order to bring the faith in a new way to people who are in desperate need of it. And both of these young men model that community, encounter, all of these things that lead you into a personal relationship with Christ. And it's been so awesome to see how many people are here to use this tool that we all have, that we all, I think, waste, to varying degrees, and how to bring people closer to God with that.
That's a great point, Elizabeth. Thank you. Adora, we only have about 2 minutes left. I know that you're a mom and you really wanted to bring your son for this momentous occasion. How is Dominic doing? What are his thoughts this morning?
Oh gosh, Dominic thought it was absolutely incredible. We met one of our cousins from California who also came for the canonization. He was just amazed by St. Peter's, walking through there. Just all of it, Teresa. It's very hard to articulate into words sometimes what you're experiencing, and it takes, several days to process. But he was just elated that he could be there and experience this, once in a lifetime opportunity. And from a mother's perspective, I just kept thinking about Carlo's mom and what she must have been feeling. And, the fact that she was there at her child's canonization, I just can't imagine how she was feeling.
Yeah, Elizabeth actually got to meet her. You got to meet her, didn't you, Elizabeth?
I did, yes. I saw her down, by her seat, and I channeled my inner John Hale and went up to her and made sure I got a picture and got to thank her for her son.
That's awesome.
She's sweet. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to interview her. She's very nice. She's very approachable. We have been talking with, of course, two lovely ladies from the southeastern Michigan area who are in Rome, are still actually in Italy. Elizabeth is still in Rome, and Adora has moved on up to Assisi. And they're both here, of course, for the canonization. And just such a delight to talk to both Adora and Elizabeth Hale. Any final comments, Elizabeth? I'll go back to you, and then Adora, I'll let you wrap up. What would you like to leave people with this morning, Elizabeth?
Oh, my goodness. I think, inspired by these two young men, I just want to encourage people to get in front of the Blessed Sacrament, to, plug into these incredible tools that you have and use them to actually bring you out of your phone and into the pews and on your knees. So I think that's the message from both of these young men.
Wow. Very profound. Adora, as a mom and as a wife and as someone who loves the Lord and the church, you get the last word, sweetheart.
I would just say we have so many models to look up to in our brothers and sisters, the saints, and now we have these two new, young, beautiful saints to look up to, that it is really possible, no matter what your state in life is, to just be able to love the Lord the way that they did, and to center our lives on Jesus and the Eucharist, our sacraments, and to really achieve sainthood in this lifetime. It's possible. We just witnessed it with these two young men.
Yeah, and so recent as well. Carlo passing away in 2006 and Frazzati in 1925. So really, 100 years sounds like a long time, but in the time of the church and the time of the church, it's really not. So these two men, far apart in terms of time, century-wise, in terms of when they lived, but so close in so many other ways, and both are now saints, and just a fantastic event in our church. An opportunity to learn about these two amazing young men who are witnesses in so many ways. Adora Kassab Ibrahim and Elizabeth Hale, thank you both so much. Enjoy the rest of your time. Adora, I know you're in Assisi and we're going to see you later this week. Can't wait. Elizabeth, you're always so inspiring, and I know your parents are so proud of you, as am I, your Auntie T. Love you both. Thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. And so many people, I'm sure, have similar feelings about what happened yesterday, even if you weren't there in person. What a time for the church. I want to leave you with my favorite line from the Holy Father's homily yesterday. The greatest risk in life is to waste it outside of God's plan. Those two young men did not do that. They followed God's plan to the heights, as Pier Giorgio Frassati would say, and now they are saints in the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. We'll be right back. Sure, there's so many stories similar to the experience that Elizabeth and our friend Adora had as well. Both of them were there yesterday, and just an incredible day, beautiful day. Very warm, though. It was 85 degrees, and really across Italy. The temperatures are very similar. It was 85 here in central Italy near Assisi, and of course the same down in Rome. But when you're in the city, it's always much warmer, right? And then when you're sitting in the sun, it can be really sometimes dangerous. I can remember years ago when I attended and covered the canonization for St. Teresa of Calcutta. It was early September as well, and oh my goodness, it was just so hot. And I had to go on set with EWTN, and so I went over. We were actually above on one of the hotels looking over with Steve Ray's group. We were co-hosting a trip together. And so I went over to my hit on EWTN, and I can remember my makeup was melting. Elizabeth was talking about putting her makeup on. and my makeup was melting because it was so hot under the scaffolding there. But it's worth it. It is worth it. If you ever get the chance to experience anything like that, please do go, because there's nothing like it. And it sounds like it ran pretty smoothly. I was wondering, because of the fact that they didn't hand out tickets, that it would be kind of difficult. I mean, you have to wait, obviously, a couple hours, but again, to experience something like that and to be a part of it, this is a beautiful, beautiful way to see the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church universally. You get such an amazing sense of the universal church. All right, we are working on getting Matt Swaim with us. We have not heard from him yet this morning, but hopefully he will be able to join us. In the meantime, since we don't have Matt, we can now, on a Monday morning, switching things up just a little bit. It's September 8th at 2025, Nativity of Our Lady, the Blessed Mother, of course. Mama Mary, pray for us. Why don't we take some time and check the news, and we'll see if Matt can join us a little bit later on in the program. So here we go on a Monday, the news on EWTN. Well, as you mentioned, the main story we're talking about, at least the first part of the program this morning, addressing over 80,000 faithful filling St. Peter's Square yesterday for the Mass with the canonization of Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis. Pope Leo saying the examples of the two young saints invite all of us, especially young people, to direct our lives upward to God and makes them masterpieces of holiness, service, and joy. In his homily, the Holy Father reflecting on the extraordinary witness of both new saints, recalling words from the first Sunday reading from the Book of Wisdom, the Pope observing that, like King Solomon, these young men sought the gift of wisdom to better understand God's plan for our lives and world and follow them faithfully. And in doing so, he said, they used their gifts to bring others to God through their example, words, and actions. And you can find more information, of course, on our website, EWTN.com, and all of our news outlets. If you missed any of the coverage, please check it out. There were great stories and great specials all weekend long, and many of them are still available. In other news, at least 5 people were killed and more than a dozen were hurt after a group of attackers opened fire on a bus in Jerusalem this morning, paramedics said. According to Fox News, the shooting unfolded at a busy intersection in northern Jerusalem on a road that leads to Jewish settlements located in East Jerusalem. Police say the attackers were neutralized soon after the shooting began, but have not released additional information about the attackers' identities. Paramedics who responded to the scene said the area was chaotic and covered in broken glass, with people wounded and lying unconscious on the road and a sidewalk near the bus strip. The deadly attack comes as the ongoing war in Gaza approaches 2 years since the October 7th massacre. The war in Gaza has sparked a surge of violence in both the Israeli-occupied West Bank and Israel. Palestinian militants have attacked and killed Israelis in Israel and the West Bank, while there has also been a rise in settler violence against Palestinians. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump issuing what he calls his last warning to Hamas, urging the Palestinian militant group to accept a deal with Israel to release hostages from Gaza. Trump saying Sunday on Truth Social that the Israelis have accepted his terms, and it's time now for Hamas, he said, to accept as well. He went on to say that he's warned Hamas on the consequences of not accepting, and this is his last warning. There will not be another. The president is also set to speak at the Museum of the Bible in Washington today. His appearance coinciding with a public meeting held by the Department of Justice's Religious Liberty Commission to gather information and testimony on issues related to religious freedom in America. Trump creating the special commission earlier this year through an executive order as part of his new White House Faith Office. Parents and students are expected to testify about their experiences of expressing their faith in public schools at the hearing. And a man accused of attempting to assassinate President Trump is set to go on trial today in Florida.
Ryan Ruth was arrested in the run-up to last year's election when he was spotted hiding in the bushes with a rifle at Donald Trump's West Palm Beach Country Club. He's pleaded not guilty. Jury selection is expected to take 3 days, with the trial scheduled to last up to 4 weeks.
Reporter Nick Harper explaining earlier this summer a judge ruled Routh can defend himself after advising him against it. He has pleaded not guilty to attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate, as well as pleading not guilty to other charges. And nearly 50,000 people, many of them first responders, have been diagnosed with 9/11 related cancers. It's a more than 140% increase over the last 5 years, according to the World Trade Center Health Program. The cancers are linked to toxins released in Ground Zero in New York City and the Fresh Kills landfill, which was used as a sorting ground for rubble. Far more people have now died from 9/11 related cancers than were killed in the terror attacks. It is a Monday morning. It's 21 minutes past the hour. A little bit of a look at the news for you, but now let's go right to our friend Matt Swaim from the Sunrise Morning Show, and also, of course, the Journey Home. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now for our Journey Home highlights on a Monday. Hey, my friend.
Hey, Teresa, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well. And, this is always kind of the start of a new season of the Journey Home, the Monday after Labor Day, because the first one ever to air was on September 5th, 1997.
Really?
So this is sort of the start of the brand new season. Do you know what Marcus Grodi's first ever words were on the first ever episode of the Journey Home?
No.
He was, opening up, went straight from the music, and he said, "Greetings in the powerful name of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Aww.
Everyone at EWTN is saddened to hear of the passing of Mother Teresa, and we'll be having special coverage later this day." So
wow.
that was his first ever episode, was the day that Mother Teresa died. And so before he even told you who he was and what this show was, that was the news.
Pretty incredible. So who's coming up tonight?
Your friend and mine, Bishop James Conley of the Diocese of Lincoln, is going to be
amazing.
on. Yes. So if you don't know his backstory, I'm not going to spoil it all by just telling you that it's incredible. He went to the Kansas University Applied Humanities program under John Sr., and I don't know if you know the backstory of that program. It was a secular state university, but they had this applied humanities, like philosophy and literature and art kind of program. And this weird thing happened, like all these students started converting to Catholicism, not because they were being taught the catechism in class, but because they were experiencing this, kind of extraordinary understanding of a sacramental worldview. And out of that program, by the way, comes Archbishop Paul Coakley of Oklahoma City, John Sr., of course, the monks that started Clear Creek Abbey are out of there as well, David Dean, who's a superintendent of schools in Oklahoma. There's like a massive wave of converts that all came out of that one program.
Wow. So you're going to talk not only about, of course, with the bishop about his own journey, but also about the program itself?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we can't talk about the program itself anymore because it got shut down because too many people were converting to Catholicism. So it only lasted a few years.
I think I remember this now. Yeah, okay, now my mind is like going in a million places.
Yeah, I wish I could tell people to go and join the program, but no.
Yeah. Well, do you think they'll start it up again?
I have no idea. But what I will tell you is that there's been a massive revival in classical education in the United States, not just among Catholics, but among all kinds of people who, kind of look at what the other sort of John Dewey progressive secular education model is and think to themselves, maybe there's something a little deeper and a little bit more than just taking classes, getting a job, getting a degree. And, Bishop Conley will talk on tonight's episode about his work with things like the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education and the importance of good Catholic education, which I think is so important. We talk about all the people who lose their faith, when they're kids and how will we reach the young people? Well, we got all these young people who are going to Catholic schools.
And now we have two very young saints, right? And
right?
we can add the saints in there to help us with that as well. Yeah.
So,
all right, my dear, glad you were able to join us, even if it was a little shorter segment. Matt Swaim, of course, host of the Sunrise Morning Show, and he's with the Journey Home and the Coming Home Network, and we always appreciate checking in with him on Mondays. And God willing, we'll talk to you next Monday, both at 7 a.m. and then at 9 a.m. 7 a.m. on the Sunrise Morning Show and 9:15 a.m. actually, Eastern Time on Catholic Connection. We'll be right back. Dr. Monica Miller coming up next. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Catholic Connection. It's a Monday morning, September 8th, 2025, the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Thanks for tuning in. So grateful for the opportunity to talk life. This is your pro-life radio network. Of course, we're a pro-life network in general. And always important to have my dear friend and fellow Michigander on the phone with me, Dr. Monica Miller with Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. She's an author, speaker, also a theologian, and has been doing so much work in the area of life for so many years. And Monica, we are very close now to something that is so important for us to remember the unborn. The National Day of Remembrance is coming up. Tell us all about it, my dear. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, great. Thank you, Teresa, for this opportunity. Yeah, this is our 14th year.
Wow.
Doing the National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Babies. And we have over 200, count them, 200 memorial services for unborn aborted babies this coming Saturday, September 13th. I mean, literally all across the country. So there are 60 actual graves, Teresa, of aborted babies. And so all of those graves will be covered by a memorial service. And we have some of those graves are actually in Michigan, as you well know. Then there's the many memorial markers. Many of them we can thank the Knights of Columbus actually for erecting them. So memorial services will also be at the memorial markers as well. This is so easy to find out, where. Okay, so where is one of these memorial services going to take place, right? So just go to the website, which is National Day of Remembrance, all one word, of course, nationaldayofremembrance.org. Super easy. It's a very user-friendly website. Click on locations, and then you scroll down to your state, and every memorial service will be cataloged, and you can find out where, the directions, the address of where one of these services is going to take place. And I really hope people will come out.
In terms of the 14 years, what have you seen happen, Monica, in terms of getting more attention and also getting more people involved? I can remember one of the ones I attended, I was speaking in Indiana, and there were quite a few grandparents who had lost grandchildren through abortion, and that was extremely rough. Sharing their own stories, because it's so much more. I mean, not that it isn't important to focus on the mom and the baby, of course, but when we look at the issue of abortion, it just spreads out. It affects so many people. It affects all of us.
Well, actually, it is, and it's a very interesting question, because why do we do the National Day of Remembrance every year on the second Saturday of September? And the reason for that is because in 1988, we buried, people may probably be shocked, but we buried 1,200 aborted babies at Holy Cross Cemetery in Milwaukee. And, 1,200. Well, that 1,200 was a part of 5,000 aborted babies that we had retrieved off of a loading dock at a pathology lab in Northbrook, Illinois. And I talk about this, of course, in my book, Abandoned, The Untold Story of the Abortion Wars. It was published by Tan Books. How did we get those bodies? What did we do with them? And the burials that we planned for them, basically that's what we did for almost the entire year of 1988. This retrieval project lasted at about 10 months, and we, at the end of which we had accumulated about 5,000 bodies of aborted children. There was a large burial, thanks to Cardinal Bernardine in Chicago. He buried 2,000 of those victims, and so we buried the 1,200 in Milwaukee on September 10th of 1988. So I partnered with the Pro-Life Action League in Chicago. So I worked very closely with Eric Scheidler. And so they are the co-sponsor also of the National Day of Remembrance. And when we had the burial of those 1,200, there was a woman standing behind me, and she leaned over and whispered in my ear, "This is the memorial service for my aborted baby." Oh. So, this really kind of sense helps even those who've had abortions to know that at least a small fraction of the 65 million who have been executed under the law, starting with Roe versus Wade, of course, actually managed to find their way into a human cemetery. And it's a comforting moment for some of these women.
Yeah. And it's really important, too. There was a report that came out last week, and I did an editorial segment on it. I don't know if you saw it, but another psychological impact report. They studied women who had had abortions and who were hospitalized for various mental illnesses and compared them to women who went through with their pregnancy. And the rates, Monica, were through the roof in terms of what women suffer when they have an abortion, and not just the physical risk that they take.
I haven't read the whole thing, but I did see it, and I have a link to it in my inbox. Definitely need to take a look at that. So yeah, I mean, women will carry this burden with them for the rest of their lives. And I think it's super important. Why should people come out to one of these memorial services? Well, the sad fact is, if these are abandoned children, they have no one, and we must become their family. I have an ad that's actually running on EWTN, Ave Maria Radio, a national ad to promote the memorial services, Teresa, and I quote Elie Wiesel. He is a Nazi concentration camp survivor. He wrote the book Night, which maybe a lot of people might know about that book, regarding his experiences as a Nazi concentration camp survivor. And he said, to forget murder victims is to kill them twice. Yeah. And so we can't forget that 65 million, and that's of course the approximation, but 65 million innocent human beings were slaughtered. And the truth of the matter is, most of them wound up literally in the trash. In the trash, yeah. Right.
Monica, we're going to take a break. Let's take a break real quick, and then we're going to come back and give a little bit more background and information about the National Day of Remembrance, which is coming up. And there's a website, and there most likely is going to be an event in your area. It has really grown the last 14 years, and it's important, if you can make it, to be there and to speak up for those who can't. More with Dr. Monica Miller from Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. You're listening to EWTN. It's a Monday, September 8th, and we'll be right back. September 8th, 2025. You're listening to the one, the only EWTN, Global Catholic Radio, Catholic Connection, an EWTN production. Thanks for tuning in on a Monday morning. Continue our conversation with Dr. Monica Miller, author, theologian, and pro-life leader for decades. Monica, the date again for the National Day of Remembrance, and how do people find out more information?
Right. Okay. So coming up this Saturday, September 13th, there are about 200 memorial services planned for the victims of abortion, 60 grave sites, and then the numerous memorial markers. National Day of Remembrance, all one word, nationaldayofremembrance.org, to find out where one of these memorial services is taking place in your backyard, right? Just go to the website, click on Locations tab, scroll down to your state. It's a beautiful website. It's so user-friendly. And you'll find, a list of where one of these memorial services might be taking place in, within driving distance of where you live. And I really, really hope people will come out, Teresa, and be part of this event.
How far and wide has it grown, Monica? How many states involved do you know, and how many people do you usually get?
Oh, literally thousands of people are participating in this, and it's in every state. Every state will have at least one memorial service, but usually, really, there'll be multiple services. Here in Michigan, We have about 11 services taking place. We have we have 4 grave sites, actual grave sites in Michigan of aborted babies. And I'll be at the one at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Southfield. And there's actually a very special part of what's going on there because there's a project where a group got together to erect a memorial marker for unborn children who were lost before birth, and so that marker is going to be dedicated during the memorial service as part of the memorial service. So it's a very special thing that's going to be happening there.
Wow.
That's at 11 o'clock on
11
Saturday.
o'clock Eastern Time. That's in Southfield, Michigan, which is a suburb of Metro Detroit. But again, you can go to the website for all the details. And every state has one of these events. So what a great way to honor those who lost their lives to abortion. And Monica, you work so closely with women who are abortion-minded. You did get some good news, though. I was following your emails because I'm on your email list, and you did have a save just recently in Michigan, right?
Yeah, just yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, a mom was referred to us, and she agreed to meet with us. And so we met with her yesterday. She has a 3-year-old daughter, and we were able to offer her help and to steer her away from an abortion decision. But we really do have to help her. She needs a place to live. That's her primary issue. And so we're going to be having to help get her into an apartment or buy her a trailer or whatever it is we got to do. But that was a victory, and thanks be to God that.
What's interesting about the case,
helped.
though, is that it's all money based. This woman had great financial concerns because she was living with her father, and she was concerned that if her father found out that he would kick her out. She was very frightened, and she didn't have the money to, at least she thought, to take care of another child. It's so sad. And Dominic has run into that quite a bit as a sidewalk counselor. The finances always come up. I mean, when you come right down to it, it's not a choice made because, I want my freedom. It's a choice because they feel like they're backed into a corner, right?
Yeah, well, in my vast experience talking moms out of abortion, the biggest issue is the absent father. The father that does not, they beget children, but they never actually father them, and these women are just left high and dry. They'll take them to court, for the child support, but sometimes the dads can't be found, or they don't have a job, or they're literally in arrears. They just don't pay, and I think it is the most. The largest reason, the biggest reason why women are crossing the threshold of an abortion center is the issue with the fathers. Fix that and you fix abortion.
Yeah.
Okay. Out of wedlock pregnancies, 89% of all the women getting abortions is out of wedlock pregnancies. Fix that, you fix abortion. In fact, the abortion industry thrives on that. The disordered sexual ethic, and so it's not. We can make abortion illegal, but but there's still a lot of other work that has to be done.
Well, yeah, you have to educate people. So I mean,
Right.
that's and you have to change hearts. I mean, yes, we need the laws, but if you don't change people's hearts, they're just going to go back to doing what they did before. Monica, thank you so much. One more time before we let you go, give us the details for September 13th and the National Day of Remembrance.
Right, National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children this coming Saturday, September 13th. Just check out the website, nationaldayofremembrance.org. You click on locations, scroll down to your state, and you'll find one of the memorial services, hopefully close to where you live.
And give us your website as well for Citizens for a Pro-Life Society to keep us up to
date.
Yeah,
and the National Day of Remembrance is also on our website.
Okay.
So Pro-Life Society, no hyphens, prolifesociety.org. And there'll be also information there on the recent Red Rose rescue that we did on the website. So prolifesociety.org.
Thank you, my dear, as always, for all the hard work you do. You're just such a great pro-life warrior, and we love you for it. And again, this weekend, the National Day of Remembrance, Check it out, folks. This is a way to go and pay respect to those who were killed. They're terminated because of someone's choice. And it's really a time for prayer for so many issues related to abortion. This is a beautiful event. I've been to several of them, and you really need to make an effort to get one of them in your area. So again, check it out online. As Dr. Miller said, there is one in every single state, so no reason why you can't probably attend one this weekend. Thanks, Monica. Appreciate it. Now we go to Gail Buckley. You're welcome, honey. Gail Buckley Behringer and our scripture verse of the week. Good morning, Gail. How are you? All right. Well, we obviously have somewhat of a connection issue on this end, but let's take a look at the scripture for today in terms of our mass readings, which are all so beautiful. It was interesting. We were doing the readings this morning on the balcony here in our little place in central Italy. My husband didn't have any problem going through all those names because you have the heritage and the background, of course, of the Blessed Mother and Joseph and David. It's one of those really detailed Gospels that list all the names in the history, the family history of the Blessed Mother. So it's a powerful reading. But I also wanted to go to the first reading, which is just beautiful, from Micah. The Lord says, "You, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, too small to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose origin is from of old, from ancient times. Therefore the Lord will give them up until the time when she who is to give birth has been born, and the rest of his brethren shall return to the children of Israel. He shall stand firm and shepherd his flock by the strength of the Lord, and the majestic name of the Lord his God, and they shall remain, for now his greatest shall reach to the ends of the earth, and he shall be peace." I love that last line in that Old Testament reading from the Old Testament book of Micah. He shall be peace. And he is indeed, and brought to us through, of course, the Blessed Mother who said yes to the Lord, asking her, or the angel asking her that question. Gail Buckley is with us now. Gail, good morning. Thanks for joining us. And what's our scripture verse for the week?
Good morning. I'm sorry, somehow I lost it. But anyway, it's from Mark chapter 10, verse 25. And I think we've talked about this before, about 5 years ago, Teresa, but it's the verse says, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." And I think this is an often debated, verse, which, is also found in the Gospel of Matthew and Luke. But Jesus made this statement following a conversation that he had with a rich young man who was unwilling to part with his possessions to follow Christ. And I think the core meaning of this verse centers on the immense difficulty, and sometimes even the impossibility from a human perspective, for those who trust in their wealth to enter into the kingdom of God. So the phrase "eye of the needle," that's something that has been subject to various interpretations. And some scholars suggest it refers to a narrow, like, man-sized gate in Jerusalem. They sometimes call it the Needle's Eye. And this gate is so narrow that a camel would have great difficulty going through it. Camels usually have the packs on them. They have saddlebags that are full, and also they'd have to take off these saddlebags and then try to squeeze the camel through. And so this interpretation, implies that while it's challenging, it's not entirely impossible to, get to heaven. But others have argued that the Greek word for needle literally means a sewing instrument, reinforcing the idea of a literal tiny opening. And then the Greek word, that Jesus might have intended to say would be thick rope instead of camel, because it was misinterpreted. But I don't think that's the case, because the Bible doesn't have any error. So I don't go with that. Anyway, regardless, it's obvious that Jesus meant it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for a rich person to get into heaven. But the primary message is not that wealth itself is inherently evil, or that all rich people are not going to heaven. Instead, Jesus is addressing the heart condition of a person who place their trust and security in their riches rather than in God. And so the rich young ruler, despite, that he was keeping all the commandments and doing all the right things, he was unwilling to surrender his wealth, and that revealed that his possessions were more like an idol to him. And I don't want to mention, here, Teresa, that there's another verse in the Bible that's often misquoted, and that is that money is the root of all evil. And it's not
the love of money. The love of money that's the root of all evil. Right.
The love of money. And that's what we're talking about, is the heart condition that people put money before God, and that doesn't apply to just, riches. It could be anything or anyone for that matter. God wants to be first and foremost in our life. And so I think we should all ponder this verse and examine ourselves to be sure that we're not holding on to any earthly treasures or that might hinder our relationship with God. And like I said, that doesn't apply to just riches or things. It could be our job. It could be, a person. It could be anything. But God tells us he wants to be first in our lives.
Yep, just like the Pope said at the homily for the two new saints yesterday in terms of putting God first and making sure they're working within God's plan. Gail, thank you so much. Appreciate that. What is the website for Catholic Scripture Study International?
Yes, it's cssprogram.net.
cssprogram.net. Look forward to next week. And I was talking about one of my favorite verses in the first reading today from Micah. It reminds me of the Alleluia chorus talking about our Lord. He is peace. I love that line. I love it. Thanks, Gail. Appreciate you and all your great work with the Scripture and helping us learn more about the Bible. And I want to say a quick congrats to Veronica Dudow. She is our new full-time anchor of EWTN News Nightly. She's an Emmy Award-nominated journalist who's reported on major stories across the country and around the world. She's a cradle Catholic educated as well. So she's bringing both her faith and her passion and truth for journalism to the anchor desk, and she begins this evening. That's tonight. Congrats, Veronica. Hope I get to meet you in person someday. All the best in your new role as the anchor to the wonderful program EWTN News Nightly. We'll be right back on a Monday morning to let you know what's coming up on EWTN's Radio Extra. All right, being that we just canonized Carlo yesterday, St. Carlo Acutis, did you know there is a brand new beautiful rosary? St. Carlo Acutis Rosary by the wonderful Gorelli Company. They do such great work. The rosary is more than a tool for prayer, as we all know. It is a call to holiness, a silent companion leading us to adore our Lord and the host, just as Carlo did, with unwavering faith and contagious joy. So you can check out the St. Carlo Acutis Rosary, available now at the EWTNRC.com. Of course, EWTN Religious Catalog or EWTNRC.com. Coming up in the second hour of the program, I'm sure you're going to enjoy our conversation because we have Vanessa Denhagarmo from Epiphany joining us, and she's a dear friend of mine, also a media expert. Both of us are very troubled by this very big story concerning CBS News and a new possible leader in the newsroom and the way the reporters, the news team, the way they're reacting. It is so ridiculous. The media don't want anyone that might question their judgment or lack thereof ever so slightly, even if they identify with them politically. It is amazing how they are just running from any type of constructive criticism or feedback in terms of their coverage. So we'll discuss that story. And then I am very excited to have Kevin Wells with us in studio. He's actually taping because he's going to be on, of course, Jim and Joy later in the week, and he's going to be discussing his book, How the Sacraments and Prayer Help Save a Marriage. And he's talking about the situation in his own marriage, how dramatic it was, and how the sacraments and the prayers made all the difference. That's coming up in the next hour on EWTN Radio Extra. Stay tuned. More Catholic Connection coming your way on a Monday.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Welcome to hour number 2 on a Monday. It's September 8th, the Feast of the Nativity of the Blessed Mother. Hope your Monday is going well. The day after some pretty important events in the One Holy Catholic and Apostolic Faith, of course, the canonization of Carlo Acutis and Pier Giorgio Frassati taking place in Rome yesterday, the first canonization mass for our new Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, and what a day it was. Deacon Dom and I were in Assisi over the weekend, which of course is the burial place for Carlo Acutis. We did not get down to Rome, but watched all of our great coverage on EWTN very, very closely. And hopefully you had a chance to listen to the first hour of Catholic Connection, where we interviewed two lovely women from my home area of southeastern Michigan, both of whom were there in person yesterday and said it was just an unbelievable time. and so encouraging and motivating, especially for young people. And I think you'll find the second hour of Catholic Connection on EWTN Radio Extra encouraging and motivating as well. For our 2 cents segment, I'm going to bring along my friend, fellow journalist, and talk show host Vanessa Denhut Carmo. Both of us were going back and forth the last couple of days over this story about the newsroom. CBS News, the employees within the editorial department are having a fit. I mean, they're losing their minds over the fact that one of their new executives and bosses could be the woman who left the New York Times and started this very successful news site, the Free Press, freepress.com, where they actually try to instill balance into investigative reporting. And she is Jewish, and she is more pro-Israel. And I don't think she's pro-anything. I really have been watching her work. Of course, she's liberal in terms of the way she looks at the world. But at the same time, her reporting, as is her partner's reporting at the Free Press, Early Berliner, who used to work at NPR, you remember that whole story. But they are having a fit, they're having a meltdown because she may be their boss. And they're saying, oh, objectivity is dead, as if they were objective prior to even the discussion of her possibly coming on. So we want to take a look at this story because it tells you the mindset of the secular press, and that's very dangerous. First of all, for them to be totally blocked to any type of criticism or reviews, that they don't want to hear anything from anyone that disagrees with them on anything. So we'll talk about that with Vanessa and what it means for us as media consumers. And then excited to have Kevin Wells in studio with us this morning. He is going to be a guest of Jim and Joy Pinto at Home with Jim and Joy, and his programs will air, I believe, September 10th and September 11th. He's going to talk to us about how his marriage was saved, how the sacraments and prayers can help save a marriage. And he has a beautiful book, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family. So Kevin Wells is in studio with us this morning and looking forward to catching up with him. I actually met him in person many years ago, and we both were actually doing book signings at the Shrine during the March for Life many years ago. Let's take a look at the forecast this morning on a Monday, September 8th. The National Weather Service is saying we have severe thunderstorms that could produce isolated hail and damaging gusts over portions of western Kansas. Also looking at northwest Oklahoma to be impacted and the Oklahoma-Texas panhandle. A high-pressure system is also bringing mostly clear skies but cooler temperatures across much of the eastern U.S. to the mid-south through the middle of the week. It is a Monday morning. You are listening to hour number 2 here of Catholic Connection, and we are glad to bring you the news right now, let you know what's happening here on EWTN Radio Extra. Let's check it out. Well, of course, major story we're following, addressing over 80,000 faithful filling St. Peter's Square yesterday for the Mass with the canonization of Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis. Pope Leo XIV saying the examples of these two young saints invite all of us, especially the young, to direct our lives upward to God and make them masterpieces of holiness, service, and joy. In his homily, the Pope reflecting on the extraordinary witness of both new saints, recalling words from the first Sunday reading from the Book of Wisdom, the Pope observing that, like King Solomon, these young men, he said, sought the gift of wisdom to better understand God's plan for our lives and our world and follow them faithfully. And in doing so, they then used their gifts to bring others to God through their example, their words, and their actions. In other news this morning, at least 5 people were killed. More than a dozen were hurt after a group of attackers opened fire on a bus in Jerusalem this morning. The shooting unfolded at a busy intersection in northern Jerusalem on a road that leads to Jewish settlements located in eastern Jerusalem. Police say 2 attackers were neutralized soon after the shooting began, but have not released additional information about the attackers' identities. Fox News tells us paramedics who responded to the scene said the area was chaotic and covered in broken glass, with people wounded and lying unconscious on the road and a sidewalk near the bus stop. The deadly attack comes as the ongoing war in Gaza approaches 2 years now since the October 7th massacre, the war sparking a surge of violence in both the Israeli-occupied West Bank and in Israel. Palestinian militants have attacked and killed Israelis in Israel and the West Bank, while there has also been a rise in settler violence against Palestinians. President Trump, meanwhile, issuing what he calls his last warning to Hamas, urging the Palestinian militant group to accept a deal with Israel to release hostages from Gaza. Trump saying yesterday on Truth Social that the Israelis have accepted his terms and it's time for Hamas to accept as well. He went on to say that he's warned Hamas of the consequences of not accepting and this is his last warning, and there will not be another. The president is also set, meanwhile, to speak at the Museum of the Bible in Washington today, his appearance coinciding with a public meeting held by the Department of Justice's Religious Liberty Commission to gather information and testimony on issues related to religious freedom in America. Trump creating the commission earlier this year through an executive order as part of his new White House Faith Office. Parents and students are also expected to testify about their experiences of expressing their faith in public schools, and that will happen at the hearing. A man accused of attempting to assassinate President Trump set to go on trial starting today in Florida.
Ryan Ruth was arrested in the run-up to last year's election when he was spotted hiding in the bushes with a rifle at Donald Trump's West Palm Beach Country Club. He's pleaded not guilty. Jury selection is expected to take 3 days, with the trial scheduled to last up to 4 weeks.
That's reporter Rick Harper explaining earlier this summer a judge ruling Ruth can defend himself after advising him against it. He has pleaded not guilty to attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate and other charges. And the president is repeating his vow to clean up Chicago. Speaking to reporters on the White House lawn yesterday, the president called it fake news when asked if he was going to war in the Windy City.
We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our city. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
Trump scolding a reporter, telling her to be quiet, and then asked, do you know how many people were killed in Chicago last weekend? He answered his own question by saying 8 people were killed and 71 were wounded. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is expressing the need for more pressure from American and European allies against Russia. During an appearance on ABC's This Week, he said it starts with Russian energy.
This is only one way how to stop the killer. You need to take off his weapon. Energy is his weapon.
This comes as the two nations have been at war for over 3 years, and the U.S. has been trying to negotiate an end to the ongoing conflict. President Trump said last week he'll speak to Russian President Vladimir Putin in the near future, adding that the two are having a very good dialogue. And Mark Mayfield tells us the president's borders are. Tom Homan says Americans can expect more workplace immigration raids, such as the one at Georgia's Hyundai plant last week.
That's what he told CNN Sunday, also saying that hiring illegal workers is a crime and undercuts competition that's paying U.S. citizens. Homan's comments come after Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents arrested hundreds of people Thursday at the electric battery plant, most of whom were South Koreans here illegally. The South Korean government was able to reach a deal with the Trump administration for the release and return of the detained migrant workers. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Nearly 50,000 people, many of them first responders, have now been diagnosed with 9/11 related cancers. It's a more than 140% increase over the last 5 years, according to the World Trade Center Health Program. Those cancers are linked to toxins released at Ground Zero in New York City and the Fresh Kills landfill, which was used as a sorting ground for rubble. Far more people have now died from 9/11 related cancers than were actually killed in the terrorist attacks. And Daniel Martindale tells us 2 USC libraries are expected to reopen this morning after a bomb threat.
USC police and LAPD officers searched the Levy and Doheny Memorial Libraries late Sunday afternoon and deemed them safe. The bomb threat was reported at about 2:45 p.m. The all-clear was given a few hours later. The initial threat was sent to a staff member, but it's unclear where it came from. I'm Daniel Martindale.
The Treasury Secretary says the country has to look at the big picture following a less than desirable jobs report. Appearing on NBC's Meet the Press, he said President Trump's policies will see the country through.
We're not going to do economic policy off of one number. We believe that good policies are in place that are going to create good, high-paying jobs for the American people.
The report showing just 22,000 new jobs added in August, which is down from the previous month's 73,000. The number was expected to be closer to 75,000. It's the first report since the president fired the agency's stats chief. And federal health officials say a salmonella outbreak linked to certain home delivery meals from Metabolic Meals has sickened over a dozen people and hospitalized 7 in some 10 states. The meals were made and delivered by Metabolic Meals Company during the week of July 28th. Now, the CDC said Friday those sickened were in California, Missouri, Georgia, Minnesota, Texas, Arkansas, Illinois, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, and Washington State. The company's website says it's a home delivery meal subscription service focused on macro-friendly meals. The CDC saying Metabolic Meals is working with investigators and has reached out to customers directly who purchase the affected meal types to inform them of the problems and the outbreak. Lisa Carton tells us that Maryland Governor Wes Moore says he's ruling out a presidential run in 2 years, or 3 years, actually.
Moore made the comment during an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press, saying that he's, quote, excited about going back in front of the people of my state and asking for another term. The Democratic governor has been floated as a potential contender for the White House. The 46-year-old has been considered a rising star in the Democratic Party for years, but he gained national attention last year while displaying his strong leadership style after the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed. I'm Lisa Carton.
Chrysler recalling over 91,000 Jeep Grand Cherokee hybrids in the U.S. over a software malfunction. NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, noting that Transportation Safety Administration, noting that some Jeep Grand Cherokee plug-in hybrid electric vehicles from 2022 to 26 may have an overloading of the battery pack control module microprocessor, causing it to reset. And Rob Martier tells us a global study of over 100,000 young people saying owning a smartphone before the age of 13 is tied to poor mental health and well-being in early adulthood.
The study was recently published in the Journal of Human Development and Capabilities. It found that 18 to 24-year-olds who had their first smartphone at 12 or younger were more likely to report suicidal thoughts, aggression, detachment from reality, poorer emotional regulation, and low self-worth. The data also shows these effects are linked to early social media access and higher risks of cyberbullying, disrupted sleep, and poor family relationships in adulthood. I'm Rob Martier.
You know, it's interesting. I wanted to run that story in light of what we can learn about media, not only for young people, but for adults, because we look at Carlo Acutis and what a great example he is for all of us. He had such discipline. I mean, what teen doesn't like to play video games? A lot of adults like to play video games as well. He limited himself to an hour a week, and he was a teenager. What a great witness on so many levels. It is a Monday morning. We're so happy you're tuned in to the second hour of EWTN's Catholic Connection on EWTN Radio Extra. Coming up, speaking of the media, well, staff members at CBS are very unhappy about a particular person who could be their boss. Unbelievable. You may be shocked as to why. Maybe not. Vanessa Denhagarmo and I will discuss up next. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. So I'm looking at one of the stories that Vanessa Denhagarmo, media expert, author, speaker, and fellow talk show host, and I have been sharing the last week or so. This is from a New York Post, only a few days old, actually. CBS News staffers apoplectic over Barry Weiss's apparent imminent arrival, and they're threatening to quit. Now, V, when I saw this headline, I'm trying to wrap my head around this, because Barry Weiss, from all intents and purposes, is liberal in her thinking in many ways. Now, she's also Jewish, and she also does a good job of providing balance on the story about the war in Israel. And the media are going nuts, especially not only just in the CBS newsroom, but across most of the national secular, spectrum. They're acting as if they're hiring a horrible person who doesn't understand that. It is just unbelievable that they should be cheering this woman, because she left the New York Times because she felt that they were not doing a good job in terms of investigative reporting, in terms of facts, in terms of balance. And so she started her own company, very successful outlet called thefreepress.com. They do investigative reporting. Early Berliner joined them because he left NBR, another liberal who left NBR for the same reason. And yet the media at CBS, the newsers, they're not happy at all. What are your thoughts on this? Thanks for joining me.
Well, the story's not just about one hire. Really, it's a litmus test, right, for how legacy media is adapting to what's going on in the world today, and their ability to get back into a centric type of approach of reporting, right, to be balanced of what they're supposed to be. And, she basically has challenged the media in recent times, especially in her platform, on not being balanced, right? And being biased and not getting different voices and different perspectives. And even though she sways more to the left, she's really challenging them to go back to what journalism is all about. And I think that's why they're outraged, because she's not in line with an agenda that they have had going on for a long time. And so, I think this is about, expanding the audience. I think that, CBS has basically seeing the numbers plummeting over the recent years and gauging what's going on with the audience and the viewership, and basically saying, maybe people just do want, a broader view and objectivity back into the newsroom, and having viewpoints from different perspectives and not just one particular viewpoint.
Now, what's amazing to me, though, go ahead, finish
No,
your thought.
no, I was just going to say the amount of $100 to $200 million reflects a major investment and a very relatively young media outlet, the Free Press. So I kind of was taken back by the price, but that's another conversation. But go ahead, T.
I was just going to say, what is amazing to me, though, is that it is in line with, in terms of the opinions of the media, their personal opinions outside the newsroom, which is where they should be. But if you take the polls, we look at the polls, most of the media are still very, very left-leaning in their own personal views. Yeah. And now, of course, that has been showing up in the reporting for years. But it is amazing to me that they wouldn't want someone like this. But they're so delusional, because they think they're actually balanced. That's what some of the comments are. Well, she's not balanced. We are. And so she comes in, it's going to be unbalanced coverage.
Yeah, that's such an example of lack of self-reflection. I mean, if you were so balanced, why have you lost so much of the viewing audience? I mean, I think overall news organizations are under pressure to rebuild trust across the political spectrum, T. And a centrist editorial approach may be seen as a way to retain that legacy viewers that they lost, you know what I mean? While attracting independents and moderates who feel alienated by all this partisan coverage. And I think people are just sick of it. I think that is obvious to them. And people who have any sense of a business mind, who are looking at the bottom line, and we've talked about this for a long time now, how do they continue down that business model when they're bleeding? They're in the red all the time. And so somebody's obviously saying, we can't do this anymore.
Right. Not happy at all. One person familiar with the mood inside CBS told Status News, adding that many journalists are bracing for impact. Another insider warning that Weiss' arrival would set off a firestorm, especially over coverage of Israel and Gaza, saying some employees would be apoplectic at the prospect of taking editorial direction from her. Are you kidding me?
Oh, but you can have editorial direction from somebody who's so far, as long as they're in line with your viewpoint, you're fine with editorial direction. They always talk on both sides of their mouth. I mean, you hear them writing about, after Trump left, I saw all this, editorial commentary from the editors of different publications locally and nationally saying, well, maybe we should be getting different viewpoints, and maybe we should, come to the table and talk. And you're like, really, you think? But when it really comes down to it, they don't want that. They really don't want that. And this is evident of that, because they wouldn't be so up in arms over this hire at all when it's a woman who's really basically saying we've lost our way. I mean, she's commented over the years, we've lost our way. We've become too biased.
A lot of this has to do with her views on Israel, and she's asking for balance and pushing for balance in her own publication. If it were a pro-Palestinian executive, I wonder how they'd feel about it.
Exactly. So, I mean, T, this is just in line with what we've been seeing, but it is kind of refreshing to make note that David Ellison, the new ownership, is kind of looking at this from a different perspective and is realizing that we have to go back to what I think that's what he's doing. We have to go back into a more centric type of reporting and get both sides of the story. And listen, there's places in the media, T, and you and I talk about this all the time, where commentary is appropriate. Opinions are welcome, but it has to be opinions on both sides. It can't be pushing a particular agenda. And then there's moments where the platform should be only about reporting facts and information and being balanced in your coverage. So, if CBS is trying to go down that road, I think it's because they have their pulse on what the general, what the media, the audience wants, the American people want, because they've lost so many of the viewers over the years.
Well, that's how the Free Press became so successful, this Free Press website. The Free Press launching in 2022, quickly drawing attention, the New York Post reports, are high-profile contributors and Weiss confrontational voice on hot-button issues. She has hosted interviews with senators and celebrities, and her podcast, honestly, has booked, Be Still My Heart, Republicans as well as Democrats.
Wow.
Shocker.
Yeah, shocker. Like, that's such a foreign concept. And, you know, and I still see this locally, T. You know, just the other day on social media, I saw a couple local reporters bashing Trump left and right. I'm thinking, why is that okay? You know, I'm supposed to go read your articles in the local paper and think you're objective? When I'm watching you on social media, constantly bashing just one side, I mean, we have really lost our way, and I don't know where this or how this really happened and when that turning point happened. I'm trying to gauge it, but we know because we've talked to other reporters. They're actually teaching this in J school too. They're not teaching journalism. A lot of the J schools, and we've talked to people about it, are teaching activism and not journalism, and
and advocacy.
And advocacy, and so. And it's not a smart business model. It's proven not to be a smart business model. People just want the facts. They want the information. And I think they're fine with commentary and opinions as long as you hear both sides.
Or as long as you label it as commentary and opinion. That's the difference.
Absolutely, yes.
You know, and V, in our day, we would have been fired for doing what some of these reporters do. You mentioned these
100%.
reporters commenting openly on Facebook, on their personal Facebook pages.
Yes.
And bashing, whether it be Trump or any other politician, and then going out and reporting on the same people they publicly criticize. If you look at what happened to Terry Moran from ABC News, and he's still digging in his heels after weeks and weeks of losing his job and getting pushed back because of his open criticism of President Trump. That's not reporting. Okay,
no,
give us
not.
the news, and if you're doing an opinion piece, give me the chyron and label it as opinion, or let me know that it's going to be opinion. Don't sit there and claim this is news and act all up in arms and clutching your pearls because someone is going to come along and possibly take you to task to do your job.
Yeah, it's a reason that print publications will label something an advertorial even though it reads like an article, because all it is an advertisement, but it's written as an article, so it has to be labeled as an advertorial so you know the company paid for that article. And when you don't, it's very deceptive if you don't label that way. So that's the same with opinion pieces. You can't present something as news and facts when what it really is just your opinion on one particular political side or issue going on in the world or in the country. And so, I am actually surprised more reporters haven't been fired. But, especially when you see how so many media outlets are bleeding financially. I mean, many of them are locally and nationally.
And they should, I don't want to see anybody lose their job, but they should be taking the task, and they need to know how to do their job versus basically just putting themselves out there with their opinion. V, great discussion, and this is important for all of us because as Archbishop Shep always says, we need to know how the media work so they don't work on us. We'll be right back on a Monday morning. Thanks, V. Have a great show today.
Thanks, T. God bless.
You too. Well, speaking of reporters, we have one in studio with us this morning who used to work in the secular media, and thanks be to God, he left as well and is doing great work and has been for many years in the Catholic Church. And we first met, Kevin, do you remember we first met in person at the shrine? We were both doing a book signing. Remember that?
Like it was yesterday.
For the March for Life. Yeah.
Everyone was in your line. No one was in mine. So I'm like,
I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I remember.
No, that was very nice of you to say. But anyway, it's great to talk to you again. And you are in studio here at EWTN, and you're going to be a guest of the wonderful Jim and Joy show, At Home with Jim and Joy. And you're going to be on September 10th and September 11th. And what will you be talking about?
They want to dig into this book called The Hermit, the priest who saved a soul, a marriage, and a family. And it's a harrowing book that gets into the rawness of what sometimes happens in a marriage. And fortunately or unfortunately, it's my marriage. My wife encouraged me to write this book about when she began to suffer from hidden binge drinking and what a holy priest, who's now a consecrated hermit, who will never be seen again on this side, did to help pull Krista out of the tomb, really during the time of COVID 2020.
Wow. But then the other point, I think we were discussing during the break, this amazing article that you said has just gone viral, that's on Crisis right now. It's still there. It's on the main homepage of Crisis Magazine. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Teresa, I've written, as an old sports writer, I've written, thousands of articles. I just have, just because it's the way I used to earn a living. And this article got out last week in a literal way, like no article I've ever written. And it's funny you bring this up because it mentions exactly what marriage demands, or at least what it demanded for Krista and myself. And this article, just in brief, is about a Cajun priest down in the bayou who lives among the poorest of the poor. The name of his community is the Community of Jesus Crucified. And this priest crucifies himself each day of his life. He kind of grew up on the bayou in a big Catholic family, and he dies to himself each day. But if you don't mind, Teresa, I just want to read one quote that he says in the story, and I think this is one of the reasons maybe why the article really got out there. The name of the article is "A Cajun Priest and the Acadian Solution to Soft Priests in a Soft Church." Sorry for the boldness, but it got out despite the headline. And here's what Father Champagne said. And again, this, I think, goes directly to marriage when we're suffering in marriage. He says, unless we're dying to ourselves each day, are we really cooperating in the process of Jesus' crucifixion? Are we expanding ourselves? Mm-hmm. Because it is through our sacrifices, work, sweat, and prayer that we take the pilgrimage of the Acadians. Real Catholicism deals with suffering. If a Cajun is faithful to his roots, he's strong and able. He's willing to give all for Our Lady and Jesus. And as far as today's church, we're not capable of having any more John Wayne priests on horseback and out on the range unless they're trained through hard work. There are too many soft priests, but it's not their fault. They're being raised and trained that way. There's no cheap grace. St. Francis of Assisi said that Jesus will look at our souls at our judgment, but he'll also look at our hands. When you move away from the dignity of hard work, you move away from the cross, and that's when things fall apart. The problem with clergy today is not chastity, it's worldliness. You cannot have men defending your country who are soft, and you cannot have men in collars defending your souls who you think might be soft. There must be a cost. Redeeming the world means stepping into it and taking it on.
Wow. It's so interesting because it does apply. When you're reading this, I'm thinking of the analogy of marriage, because you think about Dominic and I will be celebrating in a couple of weeks, God willing, 42 years of marriage. And I think you know our story where we came very close to divorce. We separated twice, and we had to literally by the skin of our teeth claw our way back and rely on our Catholic faith to help us and to rekindle our love for the Lord, because that's what made all the difference. Is really, okay, what do we have in this Catholic faith? Why did we get married in the Catholic Church? But it is work. Once you make that commitment, it's not just all horrible situations and whatnot, but it is work. Why have we lost that sense in the church and in our relationships, Kevin, that we don't have to work at it?
Well, candidly, I think too often we see examples of softness. I'll say it again, where we do no fault divorce has permeated the land, and it's gone on. I'll say it in the Catholic Church. It's being allowed. So whether it's behind the AMBO or a spiritual director or a canon lawyer or our next door neighbor or our pastor, unless he brings up what you just said and what Father Champagne said, that there must be a cost. Like he said, redeeming the world means stepping into it and taking it on. Mm-hmm. Well, redeeming your marriage means, stepping into maybe the wounds that your spouse carries and delicately, with docility, saying, honey, I'm here with you. Maybe right now where I'm on another continent speaking a different language and we're not seeing each other eye to eye, but I'm not moving a square inch from our marriage because I love you and I took vows. And in a certain way, I'm going to love you. You say this to yourself. I'm going to love you in a deeper way now. I'm going to love you without consolations. Matter of fact, I'm going to love you by taking to the hardwood of the cross and pouring myself out, because that's the truest measure that Christ showed us of what love is.
So your wife encouraged you to write the book we mentioned earlier, in terms of, I know you're going to be discussing that book on the program with Jim and Joy, The Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family, but it does tie in directly with this priest in the bayou, and in the sense of what you did for your wife and for your marriage.
Yeah, this priest, Father Champagne, who grew up in a family of 9, praying the rosary every single night in this small room where the walls seemed to sweat in the summertime, he understood that to be a good Catholic meant to work hard. So every day his family was up at 5 a.m. working on the farm. Then they went to school and then came home, did their homework, and they're out on the farm again until nightfall. Well, he understood, well, that's what a priest does. A priest gets up every morning and says, well, I'm conformed to Christ on the cross. And
well, he's married. The priest is married to the church, the bride of Christ, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to divorce. Like, you can't divorce the burden of your identity, right? So he hasn't divorced the burden of who he is. I am a priest that sees beneath things, gets into wounds, that takes spiral staircases into indelicate and ugly things because Christ commands me to. As Christ poured himself out, well, I do too, and that's so the parallel. There is a linear symmetry between a marriage that's in travail and a priest that has to take on things that are ugly. You stick the cross on your shoulder and say, "Well, Lord, you know you're working within me, and I'm going to be relying on you now." But one thing I'm not going to do is quit. I'm not going to step away because I'll say it. It's St. Thomas Aquinas that called that effeminacy. You don't step away from a battle; you step into it.
Mm-hmm. Talking with author and speaker Kevin Wells, who is in studio with us this morning here at EWTN. And later this week, September 10th and 11th, he will be on At Home with Jim and Joy, talking about a number of things, including his book, The Hermit, the Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family, but also this very powerful article that has just, well, it's gone viral, and it keeps getting all kinds of shares, and people are retweeting it. And you need to check it out at crisismagazine.com. Acadian Priest and the Acadian Solution to Soft Priests in a Soft Church. And great article, Kevin, really well written. You can tell you have that media background, the way you write. I can see the connection there. But again, what we're talking about is being willing to roll up your sleeves. And as St. Francis said, I love that quote from St. Francis about looking at our souls, but also looking at our hands. And people, I mean, living by Assisi and diving into the life of St. Francis, being here, people mislabel him, misunderstand St. Francis so much. They see him as this very soft priest who just loved the birds and went around, whistling Dixie all the time. And they didn't realize how hard he worked and how much he sacrificed for the church as well. More with Kevin Wells on a Monday morning. It's September 8th. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in to the second hour of EWTN's Catholic Connection here on EWTN Radio Extra, having a very important conversation with fellow journalist Kevin Wells. He's going to be a guest of At Home with Jim and Joy this week, September 10th and September 11th. You don't want to miss it. He's written several books, including The Hermit, the Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family. And he'll be discussing many important topics, including what we're talking about this morning, the importance of the sacraments and prayer, and the importance of getting serious about our faith and the impact it has on marriages and family and the priesthood. The book that you wrote, The Hermit, the Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family, really talks in great detail about, well, gosh, how many of us still don't know the fallout, Kevin, if you think about COVID and how horrible that was. I mean, just looking at children alone in the education, the way parents were treated when they got a clue as to what was going on at the schools. I mean, we could go on and on and on. And you had something that was very personal that was occurring for you during COVID, and you wrote about it, right?
I did, and two things there. I do think that if Catholic historians 100 years from now are honest, they'll look back at the year 2020 and really 2021 and say it was one of the worst abdications of shepherding in the history of the church. So one person who didn't abdicate was Father Martin Flume, and briefly, as we touched on earlier, my wife had fallen into the addiction of binge drinking. Really quickly, I almost died in 2009. I had a brain aneurysm, and when I came out of it, I changed. I wanted to do the will of God more in my life, and Krista got scared, and it opened up a mother wound of shame from 20, 30 years ago that she thought she had shaken. And anyway, that's when she began to drink, and this lasted 8 years. It was truly a dark night of the soul. I can't properly explain the evil of alcoholism and what it does to a family, children, husband, spousal relationship. But I know Satan is directly involved because I saw Krista often as almost like a different entity. And what finally began to pull her out of this tomb shame was a priest named Father Martin Flume, and he kind of took her by the hand and said, "Honey," well, he didn't say honey because he he doesn't speak that way, but he said, "Krista, I'm here as your spiritual father, and we're going to get this thing right." And he began to go down into her woundedness, and right when Krista was coming out of that tomb, that casket, is when the gauntlet of COVID 2020 came down, and churches began to close, and the votive candles began to blink out, and I said to myself, oh my God, she's going to get drawn back to the diabolic, to the woundedness, to the drinking. And Father Flume said, "Kevin, don't worry about it. I'm her wingman. I'm going nowhere." And that's the reason for the book.
How important is it for you to share your story? Do you do speaking together as a couple? Because I think this would be huge, to do conferences and retreats, and because so many people are struggling.
Oh, Teresa, I want to cry. Like you, that's been asked by, like, I'm speaking this Thursday, and they're desperate for Krista to speak. And Krista is she's not like you, Teresa. She's Italian, but she's shy. Okay, so she's. I
didn't think those two words go together. Except I do get it because my husband is the same way. But he speaks with me. He does speak. You have to encourage her to speak.
I wish you would. Yeah, so here's the thing. She has free will. So she has spoken on 2 occasions with me, and she's spoken by herself. But she's kind of let me, the big blabbermouth, do the speaking. But she'll come. Like, I'm speaking Thursday night in Annapolis, Maryland. She's going to come. She might say a few words at the beginning. I'm sorry, I lost my train.
No, I was just talking about how important it is for maybe to speak together, the two of you.
Oh, I agree. So I'm going to give you her email address or text. You can talk to her later today.
I'll encourage her. I don't have any problem doing that. No, because it makes such a difference when the husband and wife are standing there together. It really does. It is not that you're not a witness, but and I give my testimony by myself a lot. But when you're talking about marriage and you have both there, the husband and the wife sharing, it's super, super powerful.
Yeah, the fact is, you're exactly right. Matter of fact, if anyone should be giving it alone, it should be her, not me. I mean, I'm the writer, but yeah, it's husband and wife standing side by side. I agree 100%.
Yeah, there's so much going on here that we could discuss. And the thing that to me is so frightening, and Deacon Dom and I, as a deacon couple, we work with a lot of married couples. We do work with Greg and Julie Alexander at the Alexander House, who are marriage coaches. It is amazing to me that we put so much effort, and this could be, it probably is, a lack of catechesis and understanding of the sacrament of marriage and what you're entering and why it's so important. Now, this is a public declaration. This is something that you go to in public in a church, and people are witnessing this. It's huge. It has such an impact on society. But then when we get into, they plan the wedding, they do all this, they plan the honeymoon, such details, such excruciating, frustration day after day, planning the reception, all the details, but they don't put any work into their relationship once they're married. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's so lopsided.
Yeah, I've often thought, that day, that beautiful day, that wedding day, that's so filled with love, the couple that prays together every day of their lives. Yeah, but here's my thought, Teresa. In a certain way, that couple that stays together 30, 40, 50 years later, they can look back on that wedding day and they can say, my God, how little we actually knew about love.
Amen to that.
So that's getting into the wounds and the crosses and saying, I will never leave you because you're my spouse and I love you.
So how do we get back to this? I mean, what do we do? I mean, because we know so many people, even in our own, I'm sure you do too, own circle of family and friends, that have given up. They have children, but they just can't get along as husband and wife, and they walk away. They just throw it all away without even trying.
Well, I think there's a great reluctance, and speak of it in a practical way, for people to get into something that's ugly and they don't want to take sides, et cetera. But I think that it is incumbent upon us that know, especially you, Teresa, and with Deacon Dom and Krista and I, to say, hey, look, I know it stinks. I know it's a stinking rotten mess and you're angry and you feel you have no marital entitlements. But let me just offer some thoughts about what happened in my marriage and what I had to go through in the dark night and what enabled me to get out. And until it's strongly encouraged, urged to stick with it. Don't leave. You took vows. Then unless that is sort of articulated like by a skywriter over the world's skies, don't leave, fight it, pick up the cross, then unless it's known, then too much of the world says, no, man, she doesn't love you. Yeah, I'd leave her too, or I'd leave him too, until the world changes its dynamic of thinking that there's beauty in the cross. The cross is the center of the hurricane. That's where the beauty is. That's where Mary and Magdalene and John were. That's where victory was. Until the world proclaims this, then there's going to be more and more divorces.
Well, I think, look, nobody asks for suffering. We're not like the great saints who are asking for suffering. I'm never going to be at that point. I'm not going to kid myself and think that I ever will. But if we look back in our lives, don't you feel now, after what you and your bride went through, that you are so much stronger for it? You have a deeper love for her, and the same, she has a deeper love for you, and appreciation for marriage.
Oh my gosh, yeah. You can't. You got to step through the fire to find out who you are. And Krista and I are on the other side of the mountain now. Our love is different. Our love is stronger. Krista's free and healthy. Yeah, of course. That it's I don't want suffering either. But you got to climb Golgotha. You can't just quit it and say I'm not gonna go any further. This is what God calls us to do, and He showed Jesus. He gave us Jesus to show us the way, and we could, like you said about St. Francis of Assisi, we can see him in a garden with a bird on his head, and say, "Oh, he was soft and gentle." But no, he went to the Muslim who he could have gotten his head chopped off and said, "I want you to convert." St. Francis was hard, so life is hard and marriage is hard, but the beauty is when we take it on.
Well, St. Francis, actually, and people mistake and say, well, when he was talking about rebuilding the church and he only went around and rebuilt it in the spiritual sense. No. I mean, I'm sure you know this, but he would go to different churches to make sure they were clean, to make sure that the chalices were in good shape, and to make sure that church physically, even if they couldn't paint it and make it a beautiful place, at least it was clean, and make sure that it was beautiful enough so the Lord could be present there in the Eucharist. He did that in addition to, obviously, changing the world with the Franciscans. So people have this image of him, and I've learned so much since living near Assisi, that he was, as you said, just running around with the birds and talking about the canticles of the sun, and isn't this wonderful? The man threw himself into rose bushes when he was tempted.
Yeah, then that's why he got the stigmata, because God knew, hey, this guy sucked it up his whole life, so he can handle violent pain, and so God knew he had a Green Beret trying to convert Italy.
You'll have quite a bit of time on your hands, of course, to speak with Jim and Joy. Any particular message on which you'll focus, Kevin? There's so much to say about standing strong in your marriage. Yeah,
one of the things that I'd like to articulate, hopefully it comes up in the conversation, is the journey of the sacramental graces that Krista received during the dark days, when she began to sort of layer after layer of these wounds began to be peeled back and sort of lift from her. Well, when she was in adoration and confession and direction and daily mass, then she began to become sanctified, because the graces could finally get in, and as the wounds fled, as the wounds were removed, the graces came in. So I would encourage, hopefully, to your listener, if right now you're caught in a dark night, I don't care if it's binge drinking, I don't care if it's pornography, whatever it is, first of all, get to confession, but then stick your nose in front of the monstrance. Get to Mass, because the graces are medicinal, and that's what saved Krista was the graces, and that's why Father Flume went nowhere when COVID started, because he knew the medicine of the sacraments would heal Krista, and he was exactly right.
I think the church is still suffering from shutting down during COVID. I mean, I don't think we're up to where we were before COVID, but that's not saying much in terms of the numbers still being low.
No, I don't think we are. I have a lot of priest friends, and I speak about COVID because I write about it, and I would say the average parish is the good parish is about 80% back. The bad parishes are 50% or lower. No, we're nowhere near. It was catastrophic when it's really, and Teresa, you know this, it's the teenagers, young adults, college-age kids. They're the ones who fled out of the church like the Israelites from Pharaoh, because kids are smart. They're like, hey, you shut down the sacraments because of a bodily disease? Are you kidding me? I don't trust you guys. I speak with candor. But they're like, I'm walking away because I want someone that can lead me to war, and you're going to shut down churches because someone might get sick. So I'm on my microscopic soapbox here, but yeah, so we've lost millions because of COVID. So you're right, we're getting it back, but that goes back to Father Champagne. We've got to do the hard work now. Okay, who cares? We messed up. Big deal. I mean, we all mess up. The church messed up. But the church should, I'd imagine, want to say, okay, now we need to embrace the demand of winning them back, and that demands stepping into it.
I would say the people and some leaders in the church messed up, because the church is the bride of Christ. The teachings were always there for us in the sacraments, and I just get frustrated sometimes because we can just look at the people and the mistakes that they make and kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about decisions made by people in the church. We're talking with Kevin Wells. He's going to be a guest of At Home with Jim and Joy this week, the 10th and the 11th, and talking about the hard work in our relationships in our life. And how come we're so willing to work on our figures, our weight, our education, building a house, willing to save and not go out to dinner, and yet when it comes to marriage, I got better things to do. Right?
Yeah, well, it's not fun, right? We want to do fun. I want to do fun things. I want to go to a Baltimore Orioles baseball game. I want to watch Braveheart again. I want to go to the backyard bonfire pit. But as I said earlier, the greatest fun is when you're at the foot of the cross and say, this is ugly, but man, it's the center of it's the eye of the hurricane. That's victory. Yeah. It's not just Easter Sunday. It's the cross when Jesus.
It's Good Friday.
Yeah, it's Good Friday, and that's where the joy is because you're at least in the game. Because you
I would not want to go through it. I'm sure you wouldn't either. What you went through in your marriage, neither would Deacon Dominic and I. But if it weren't for that suffering, he wouldn't be a deacon, and I wouldn't be a Catholic talk show host. There's no other way around it. There is no other way around it. It was that suffering that brought us to our knees, that changed our lives, and forced us to cling to the cross and the teachings of the church. Kevin, thank you for being so honest, and thank you for sharing your story. The book that we've been discussing is A Hermit, the Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family. But Kevin will be talking about a great deal about the need to be strong and not to be afraid of your cross. So pick up your cross and follow me, as the Lord told us just recently in the Gospels. Kevin, great to catch up with you again.
Teresa, it's so good to talk to you. Thanks very much for having me.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Really appreciate you. And we'll be right back to let you know what's coming up on a Tuesday morning edition. It's September 8th. It is the Nativity of Mama Mary, our Blessed Mother. We'll be right back. Big thanks to my friend Tom Price from EWTN Radio for helping out today. Richard, our producer, has a day off. He'll be back tomorrow. Speaking of Domani, Al Domani, coming up tomorrow, September 9th, 2025 on Catholic Connection. We will check in with our good friend Steve Ray. He's going to be talking about the 7 sorrows of Our Lady. And he always has such great insight into not only, obviously, the mysteries of the Rosary, and also very important details about the lives of these people that come to us from Scripture and the Catholic faith. But his background in the Holy Land has such an influence on the way he speaks and writes and teaches, so it's always so interesting and compelling to have Steve Ray on. Also excited to have Greg and Julie Alexander on with us for Mornings on Marriage. So maybe you've seen some of the stories in Catholic and other Christian circles about the engagement of Taylor Swift and how it is really sparking interest again in marriage. I can't tell you how many priests have told me, whether they were guests on the show or personal friends of ours, even our own pastor, our own churches in the Archdiocese of Detroit, how so few people are expressing an interest in getting married in a church or getting married in particular. But this is changing the game. Now, there's a mixed bag with that, and they have a beautiful perspective about it. And so they'll join us tomorrow, along with, in the second hour of the program, Newman Guide News with Kelly Solomon from the Cardinal Newman Society, taking a look at the latest news from the world of education. Hope you're having a great Monday. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow, God willing, on a Tuesday. Ciao, ciao.